How's it going, everybody? This is DeanoGTO, and today we're going to be talking about the Object 705 mini branch in World of Tanks. So I'm going to try and keep this video sub 10 minutes if I possibly can. This is mainly going to be a discussion of the three vehicles part of this mini branch: the ISM, the 705, and the 705A. Because if I'm honest with you, the last few recordings I've had for this video have been about 20 minutes long, because I have a tendency to go off on little rants in regards to the 705 and slight annoyances with the 705A and the way it's balanced. So yeah, let's just get into this here, and you will kind of get the idea of like whether or not I think it's worth going for this line. Just going off what I said with the different vehicles. Now, when it comes to the ISM is like your introduction to this line, and it seems like a very, very good introduction because it has 120 side armor, which gets your hopes up for the rest of the line. But the problem is with initially you have only got an IS turret. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go for the upgraded turret, because it changes from 100mm of armor all around to 250mm of armor on the front. Like, that substantially improves the survivability of the vehicle. It gives you an extra 100 health as well. And you can actually mount you can mount the top gun on the stock turret and the upgraded turret, but you have to unlock the top gun first before you can unlock the turret. And personally, I think the turret is probably the first thing you want to try and go for as quickly as you possibly can. I grinded 40,000 free XP before starting the grind on this vehicle, just so that I could get the turret as quickly as possible whenever I was grinding through it. I grinded about 20,000 XP on the stock version of the vehicle, then I used 40,000 then I used a bunch of free XP to finish off the grind for the top gun, and then the rest of the free XP on the turret. In the fact, it works out as being about, I think it works out as about 58,000 or 56,000 XP total. Yeah, about 56,500 XP costs you to unlock the gun and the turret. That's why I grinded about 40k. Now, when it comes to the vehicle with the top turret, it substantially improves the tank's overall survivability, and it means the tank just in general becomes a lot of fun to play, because whenever it's hull down, it's incredibly tough to deal with. But it's also very, very strong when side scraping due to that very strong turret, because unlike things like the Tiger II, the E75, you can't just shoot through the front of the turret in order to penetrate them whenever they are side scraping. This tank doesn't really have any weaknesses in that regard. It does have a cupola, but the cupola is pretty small. It does have a weak low front plate as well. That is a weak point. It also has some shoulders, which you can kind of take advantage of in regards to the frontal armor. Like if you're looking, if you see an ISM at this sort of angle here, this area here is basically flat to you, so you're able to penetrate that with no real issue whatsoever, because it is only like 130mm thick. So, for the most part, I think this vehicle is very, very powerful. You can actually go through the entire grind on this vehicle without unlocking the top tracks. Although personally, I don't recommend doing that, because the problem with not unlocking the top tracks is the vehicle's traverse speed is going to be very, very slow. So, getting the top tracks, I think, is pretty important for making the vehicle playable for the most part. But yeah, as long as you're able to cover this like shoulder weak point by using like a wall, like if you imagine everything to the left hand side of my mouse going down this line is like covered by a wall. If you're able to angle the tank roughly like that, then the armor is going to be very, very strong on this machine. So I would actually say it's about this sort of angle, everything to the left hand side of this line I'm drawing with the mouse would be covered by a wall, and that would make the tank very, very difficult to kill in that sort of scenario. So let's go on to the 705A. So the 705A's grind can actually be made significantly easier if you go down the IS7 line first, because the two upgraded guns that you can have on the 705 are both previously unlocked on the IS7 line. You can save yourself 61,000 XP if you unlock the IS7 first, because you get the 61,000 XP gun for free by unlocking the tier 10 IS7. And when it comes to the 122 BL13, that's the gun you use on the Object 257 whenever you're grinding towards the IS7. And personally, I think it's going to be a lot easier to grind the XP on the Object 257 to get that gun than on the 705, because the 705 is, in my opinion, not a very good vehicle, because it is slow. Like, typically it gets around the map at like 28 kilometers an hour, which is not very good at all. And it just in general is not that much fun to play, because it only has 90 side armor. So you go from 120 at tier 8 to 90 at tier 9. That's not very good. That is really, really bad. Like, you're losing 30 armor by going up a tier. That's, I don't really think I need to go into too much detail as to why that's bad. It basically massively reduces the angle that you can use whenever you're side scraping, and this is why the tier 8 kind of annoys me a little bit, even though it's a good machine in my opinion. It gets you prepared for a playstyle which you can't really use on the next tier, on the next vehicle up, on the ladder on this branch. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating to play this tank because essentially what you need to do if you want to make use of the armor in any shape or form is you need to pretty much be hold down, only using the turret. And the turret is very strong, but after playing the side scraping monster at tier 8, it feels very weird to be reduced to only basically using the turret at tier 9. And I really don't like the way this tank turned out. It turned out to be a very, very frustrating tank to drive. And by the way, don't even bother trying to use the 122, or not the 122, sorry. Don't even bother trying to use the 130mm guns from the IS-7 on this tank, because the accuracy and the just general like RNG on that gun is absolutely horrendous. It is probably one of the most aggravating guns I've ever used at tier 9. It just misses continuously, and it's impossible to really hit shit consistently with that gun. The 3-second aiming time combined with the 0.44 accuracy of that gun is just horrendous. You want to be using this 122 with the standard APCR rounds and 248 pin. Yes, in theory it's going to do less damage potentially if you're not able to get off that many shots in the game due to the slow speed, but at least it's going to be a bit more consistent in getting shots off because of the faster rate of fire that it has. So just in general, I would recommend using the 122, the 248 pin 122, rather than using the 130, because the 130 will just make you want to tear your hair out because it's just so RNG dependent. And also, it does have a weak lower front plate like the previous vehicle, and when it comes to like the way you angle this tank, if you angle the tank like this, I believe it's like this sort of angle, if not like this angle, you can actually shoot through the front drive wheel and penetrate the armor behind it with no real issue with like 200 to 220 pin. It's a really, really frustrating weak point. Well, it's not actually a weak point, it's just because the armor behind the tracks is crap that it just makes the tank substantially more aggravating to drive, because it means you have to drive the tank a lot of the time at like an auto bounce angle, which means people just shoot the lower front plate as you expect, and it just means that the tank is just aggravating as hell to drive because it's slow. I genuinely had experiences where an E75 overtook me, and honestly, if you're driving the Object 705, don't compare the stats to the E75s, because it'll honestly make you wonder how the Object 705 is the same tier. It will honestly make you wonder how it's even possible that they're the same tier. That's how much of a difference there is between the two tanks. Okay, so now we're on to the 705A part of the video. Now, the 705A overall I think is an okay tier 10 heavy tank, but it's not what it should have been in my opinion. This machine actually is a bit disappointing because you play the tier 8 and you get 120 side armor. You play the tier 9, you get 90 side armor. You play this thing, you get 100 side armor. Why on earth does a tier 10 heavy tank have worse side armor than its tier 8? Like, that just seems like a bizarre decision on Wargame's part. This machine should have at least had 120 side armor, no doubt whatsoever in my mind about that. And the problem with it having 100 side armor is this thing at the moment, the IS-7 can do every job this thing can do, but the IS-7 will do it faster and will do it more efficiently because it has a more consistent, faster aiming gun with better gun depression, about the same penetration, and will do it with a faster rate of fire. It only has 50 less health and has exactly the same side armor as this thing. And the turret on the IS-7 is arguably better than the turret on this thing because, well, this thing here is a very flat front of the turret, meanwhile the IS-7 is basically shaped perfectly to avoid being penetrated from the front. Like, this thing here, it honestly just feels like a badly balanced alternative to the IS-7. It's nowhere near as good as it should have been in my opinion. And I think Wargaming really messed up when it came to the balancing on this machine. Because, like, having 120 side armor on this machine would have made this thing unique, would have made it awesome. but having just 100mm just makes it basically, it just basically makes it like an IS-7 that's slower with a bigger gun, which is way more inconsistent. So I just don't get what the purpose of this vehicle is supposed to be, because the IS-7 literally can do everything it can do. It just feels like, it just feels kind of without purpose, if that makes sense. And it's not as if giving it 120 side armor would like ruin the IS-4. The IS-4 has been kind of irrelevant for quite a while now, but the IS-4 has 40 more side armor than the E75, and the E75 is only a 90-ton tank. This thing's 100 tons, yet it only has 100 side armor. Like, why is the side armor so lackluster on this machine whenever there are lighter vehicles with more side armor? Now that might sound like a weird argument, but like, I'm trying to like think of a reason like why this thing's 100 tons, and I really can't think of too many. Like, yes, it has a very strong turret, but the previous vehicles have very strong turrets as well. I mean, the 705 Tier 9 is 65 tons, and it has like a 300mm thick turret. Like, the gun in this thing weighs 4 tons, this weighs 18 tons, that's 2.5 tons, that's 15 tons, that's 160 kilograms. Like, why does this thing have, like, why is this thing 100 tons? This thing genuinely feels like it was supposed to have a different setup initially, and this didn't get around to changing the weight on the vehicle. Like, I just don't get, like, where the 100 tons came from, like, whenever the side armor is only 100mm. Like, I really do think this thing should have 120mm of side armor, and the Tier 9 should have 105. Just to make the vehicles more consistent with the playstyle you get at Tier 8. I just feel like it would make so much more sense for the different vehicles in this line. So, yeah, that's just my general opinion on the different vehicles in this line. Personally, I don't think it's worth going for at this point in time. I think they could have been very, very cool vehicles, but I think Wargaming kind of squandered them a bit and didn't really make them as good as they probably should have been. I mean, they would have still been balanced because their guns are so unbelievably inconsistent and RNG dependent. So, yeah, that's my general opinions. Let me know what you guys think of this video in the comment section below. And thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.